Before we start the meeting, would you please observe a few minutes silence in respect of Honorary Alderman Maurice Richardson, who sadly died on the 25th of August. Standing on my chaplain, John Paul,
Mighty God, from whom cometh every good and perfect gift, send down, we beseech thee, upon all those who hold office in this borough, with the spirit of justice and integrity, of wisdom and charity, may pervade our youth, seeking their own good and the well-being of those committed to their charge. Remember, advance thy kingdom upon us, and promote the true welfare of Christ our Lord. Let thy blessing rest, O God, upon this our nation, our Queen, and all in authority under her. Deliver us from all sin and corruption, from all weakness and fear. Grateful for the high trust thou hast laid upon us. Our life in that righteousness which alone exalteth the nation.
Before we begin, I need to remind you of the usual housekeeping messages. There are no fire alarm tests planned for the evening, so if the alarm sounds, please leave the chamber by the nearest door, then follow the illuminated fire exit signs and assemble in the car park at the rear of the building. Also, would you all please ensure that your phones are on silent mode? Thank you. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have so far been received from Councillors Balmain, Gibson, Greenhoff, Jones, Pimley, Moon and Robinson. Are there any other apologies?
Councillor Rayner.
Councillor Rayner.
Councillor McKay.
Councillor Holden.
Councillor Vincent.
Is that twice?
Okay. The next item on the agenda is confirmation of minutes. I have been informed that although Councillor Wilson is listed as being present at the last meeting, she submitted her apologies and did not attend. Can I please have a proposal that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 19th of July 2018 be approved as a correct record, subject to Councillor Wilson's apology for absence being recorded?
I propose those, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Is there a seconder for that proposal?
Happy to second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Does anyone want to comment on the factual accuracy of the minutes or propose an amendment? No. Would those members present at the June meeting who are in favour of confirming the minutes as a correct record, please indicate. Those... getting carried away. Okay. Those against? Any abstentions? The minutes of the last meeting are confirmed. The next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare on any items included in the agenda? Councillor Alice Collinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is item 10, Wyre local plan. I have a personal and significant other interests because the land in question is part of my daughter's land. So I will remove myself from the chamber when that is discussed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
No. The next item is announcements. Firstly, I am pleased to welcome to the meeting and to introduce you to Daniel Bitley, who has been elected as Wyre's new youth mayor. Daniel lives in Fleetwood, previously attended Millfield School, and having obtained a scholarship is now a sixth form student at Rossall School. I am delighted to be able to formally present the badge of office to Daniel this evening. It also gives me great pleasure to present our permanent memento to the retiring youth mayor, Jessica Baskill, to commemorate her period of office. Thank you, Daniel and Jessica, for attending this evening. You are both welcome to stay, but please feel free to leave now if you wish. I have three other announcements this evening. Firstly, many thanks to all of you who supported our charity parachute jump. The Mayoress, Deputy Mayoress, Councillor Emma Anderton and myself all survived without injury. Looking back, it was a great experience, but at the time it was terrifying. And the Mayoress and I are agreed not to be repeated. I haven't got all the sponsorship in yet, but we have exceeded our target, and in fact it looks like we may have raised well over £2,000 for our mayoral charity. So thank you all again. Secondly, a belated thanks to all helpers on the Mayor's Charity stall on Tram Sunday. The stall was Pelt a Politician with Wet Sponges. And you may be surprised to hear that the most popular politician to be pelted was not Jeremy Corbyn, it was not Theresa May, it was in fact, anybody? Donald Trump. Lastly, an afternoon tea is to be held at the Mount Hotel on Saturday, the 20th of October, in aid of the mayoral charities. Tickets are obtainable from Andrea Mullin, and I hope many of you will be able to come. Thank you. Are there any other announcements? The next item is public questions and statements. We have one public question this evening submitted by Honorary Alderman Roger Brooks to the Resources Portfolio holder. However, Alderman Brooks has sent a message today saying he is unable to attend this evening. Therefore, in accordance with the provisions of paragraph 9.7 of the Council Procedure Rules, the Resources Portfolio Holder will send a written response to Alderman Brooks, and the contents will be recorded in the minutes. The next item is questions on notice from councillors. However, no such questions have been submitted, so we will move on to executive reports. First, the report of the Leader of the Council. Councillor Henderson, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've only got one thing to add to the report that's before you, and that was the notice of motion that we put forward regarding the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Fire Brigade. I have since received 2 phone calls, one from the Chairman of the Fire Authority and one from a member of the Fire Brigade Union, thanking this council for supporting that motion, and since then the Police and Crime Commissioner has decided not to go forward with his proposals, but has decided to look at better ways of working alongside the Fire Brigade. I've nothing else to add. Madam Mayor, I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions or comments for the Leader? Councillor Fail.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the Leader's report, I am pleased to see that at paragraph 3.6 he refers to a work programme for the environment and climate change that will address air quality, green spaces, waste and future recycling, clean energy and flood alleviation and prevention. I'm all for a programme of work to improve our environment and tackle the climate change problem. But can you give a commitment to the council that this programme of work will not be allowed to be a matter of lip service? After all, in Wyre at this time, we have some challenging issues. We are witnessing increased commuting out of Wyre, caused in part by the huge increases in housing without the necessary employment opportunities being created within Wyre. This is leading to increased congestion and worsening air quality. In terms of green space, Wyre continues to not meet its target for public open space in a number of towns. There are plans to store gas in the salt caverns. There are plans for a gas-fired power station. And finally, not only have we recently seen the start of fracking in the area, something which flies in the face of tackling climate change, but now we may well be faced with fracking site planning permission granted through a permitted development right, thereby making it easier to damage our environment and negate attempts to halt climate change. Thank you.
Councillor Henderson, would you please respond?
Yes, certainly, Madam Mayor. As it says there, it is I, along with leaders of South Ribble and West Lancashire. This is a Lancashire County Council. It's one of our initiatives, actually, that was put forward to the Lancashire Leaders Group. And I have been asked to sit with other leaders and other officers from throughout Lancashire to address those issues that are there in front of you. And I'm not just one on my own, so there are others along there as well. Hopefully it will be pushed forward, and that it won't just be, as they would say, kicked into the long grass. We've already had one meeting. That was just a briefing to see where we're going to go from here. If there is anything at all that I need to bring back to this council, I certainly will do.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would the Leader share that I'm looking at 2.3 and its business support initiatives? Would the Leader share examples of these support initiatives that I mentioned here, please? Thank you.
Councillor Lees, that's 2.3.
Yes.
And
At the bottom it's
in connectivity.
It's talking about continuing business support initiatives, and I'm just wondering if you could give us examples of those. Sorry.
Page 12. Sorry. No, thank you, Chuck. accelerated growth focusing on our enterprise zones. These are we've already had 2 meetings with the Economic Prosperity Board that we share with Fylde and with Blackpool. We have, in the first instance, 3 meetings per year between the leaders and the supporting officers. We've had 2 already. The next one that we have, we're hoping to hold at our enterprise zone at Hill House. And Wyre has put forward recommendations of how we should move forward on these enterprise zones to try to bring in new businesses or to help businesses move along. Again, anything on that, I will certainly bring back to the council.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Brian Stevenson.
I'm obliged to you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Henderson, looking at 2.3, it strikes me it's a sort of a window dressing, putting a gloss on something which, and...
Sorry, Councillor, can't hear you.
No, you can't hear me. Right, Councillor Henderson, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Or do you not want to hear me? That's probably it. 2.3 is, to me, only window dressing. It's trying to put a shine on something which will make it appear that it's really a really good bit of action, what's going to happen or is happening. It doesn't mention social housing at all. It certainly doesn't mention the extra traffic and the danger to pedestrians what may occur. It's just something plucked out of the air to give a good sense of purpose to the people who support your party. And the ability to vary housing benefit, well, I don't know what that means. Well, we do know what it means. It certainly would mean cuts of some sort. And a sense of place, well, I don't know what a sense of place is. Can you enlighten me? Thank you very much.
No, because all of those things that you've put forward there go right across all the portfolios, so you could have asked an individual question to each individual portfolio holder. So I'm sorry, but I'm not going to take on the other portfolios to answer that.
Thank you. Councillor Beavers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just for verification, really. On 4.3, you say that you yourself and Councillor Berry attended a verification meeting with the Police and Crime panel for the purpose of verifying the proposal to establish a Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner. That verification meeting isn't scheduled to be on until the 10th, 10 a.m. on Wednesday the 19th of September. So you haven't been to a verification meeting to verify this, and also it isn't the Police and Crime Panel's remit to instruct the Police and Crime Commissioner on how to make his decisions, but to scrutinise his decisions after they've been taken. Thank you.
The quite simple answer to that one is that you will see that it's also in Councillor Berry's report as well. It's his area of responsibility. But this at 4.3 was actually at the AGM. It was brought up there. That was the point that was brought. It was a verification meeting of the Police and Crime Panel that took place within the AGM. So it's not looking into the future. It actually did happen, and it was brought up at the Crime Panel.
But there isn't a Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner yet, is there, so it can't be verified?
No, there isn't, and what it says there, whilst the panel's decision was not to support the proposal, that was the panel's decision at the AGM not to support the proposal, and the Police and Crime Commissioner was asked not to go ahead with placing more costs onto the public of this borough.
Are there no more questions? That concludes the consideration of the Leader's report. We will now move on to the report of the Resources Portfolio Holder. Councillor Alan Vincent, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report's in front of councillors. Can I just give my personal thanks to the financial team, obviously at 2.1 and 2.2. their talents have been recognised by the outside auditors as well as being recognised by all the councillors in this borough, which they have been for a very long time. I'll take any questions or comments.
Emma Anderton.
Are there any questions for Councillor Vincent? Councillor Emma Anderton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Vincent, during the recent school summer holidays, I was on the seafront in Fleetwood on a sunny Thursday afternoon, and out of 29 beach chalets, only 2 were in use. If Wyre followed the St Anne's model and rented the chalets out on a daily basis at, say, £75 per day, this would equate to a gross revenue of over £90,000 for those 6 weeks alone. If you then factor in the Easter holidays and Whit holidays, this would generate gross revenue of over £150,000 without even considering weekends not in the school holidays. The most asked question of the nearby cafe and the beach shop owners is, where do you book the beach chalet hire? So there is definitely an appetite from members of the public. I have even received an email from a Blackpool resident asking how to hire the Fleetwood chalets, as they preferred our location to that of the St Anne's chalets. Would you agree with me that it's now time to take the ownership of the chalets out of the hands of the few and make them accessible to the many? This would not only increase council income, but promote tourism in Fleetwood and boost the local economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderton. I think if you go back into a relatively short history before we took the decision to sell off the beach huts and build some more after we'd done so, you will find that historically the beach huts didn't make this authority any money at all. They did cost it a great deal of money, because when we owned them, they were subject on a regular basis to vandalising. They weren't used as often as you make out that they might be used in future, and basically they were losing a lot of money. So the way forward was taken by this council, which was effectively to sell them. The sales of them were very successful, and we built some more. They were so successful, and if we had any land to build some more on, we would probably build some more too. Whether we would want to go back to an old failed system, I doubt it.
Thank you. Councillor Hodgkinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Vincent, you have referred to it in your report, but could I congratulate you and your financial team for the excellent results that you have produced today. In sharp contrast to many other councils, including the years, who usually fall back on the old adage, good root cuts. I know this has been a challenge to all councils, but you admirably show that it is not necessarily the amount of money you get, it is how you manage that money. And I have to point out to councillors, or remind them I should say, that in percentage terms we have had just as much cut from our grant from government as these other councils. So carry on the good work, and thank you.
Councillor Vincent, would you please respond? Councillor Ronald Shewan.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. Councillor Vincent, you've got a glowing report about Amanda Latham and the KPMG 2.2. Is this the same? Is this the same KPMG who actually ratified the accounts of Carillion about 2 weeks before it went bust? And of whom Rachel Reeves MP said, "I couldn't trust you," meaning KMPG, not yourself, KMPG. "I couldn't trust you to audit the contents of my fridge." Now, I would think twice about employing them again, personally.
Well, I'm a bit disappointed with that sort of comment, Madam Mayor, because basically whoever's making it, these are the outside auditors. Whether Councillor Shewan likes them or not is a matter for him. But the bottom line is the outside auditors have made complimentary remarks about this authority, and in particular about the financial team that we employ within this authority, who are clearly ahead of the game in terms of most of the other authorities around us and throughout the UK. So whatever you think of KPMG, Amanda Latham certainly wasn't signing off the books at Carillion, I'm pretty sure of that. And I think that they have a very good reputation within the audit area, certainly in local government. And I, for one, accept what they say, which is that our team are very, very good at what they do.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent. Councillor Brian Stevenson.
I've just beat the cup, Madam Mayor. I'm obliged to you. No, this is very sad, really, what I have to say. It's almost... right, but I'm talking about number 3, Alan, number 3, contact centre. Sorry about that. Yes, this is actually what I have to say. It's almost akin to a Shakespearean tragedy. Almost, it is. It's the roll-off out of the Universal Credit Full Service. This is one of the most hated bits of legislation ever produced in this country by a government, certainly, well, we can expect it by a Tory government, and it's been a disaster. Enough previously to make a Tory MP, Heidi Allen, cry. She cried at the imposition which was put on her constituents. Now it's being imposed on the poorer people of Fleetwood. It's like as though the plague has finally arrived. Now, today, I've been into the Fleetwood CAB for advice, and all of them are in there. They're really terrified. They don't know really what to say to people, because they know a lot of people are going to be coming in there with a lot of trouble. They tell me it could take at least 5 weeks. There'll be a delay, and it could even take longer. So any Tory in here with a conscience, and well, I suppose there's 1 or 2 of them dotted about, maybe they must feel bad about it. But the whip's on, so they can't say anything. Now, people will have to go almost begging for an advance payment whilst this situation continues on of waiting. Do you think it's disgraceful, Councillor Vincent? And if you do or you don't, have you got a plan in place, a backup plan, something to ensure, to make sure that it's not 5 weeks, it's less than 5 weeks? You know, have you got anything in place to assist and help these people who are suffering because of this legislation? Come on, let's hear you tell us what it is. Thank you.
I'll ask the Minister.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Evelyn Stevenson and Councillor Kay, the time is up, I'm afraid. That concludes the consideration of the Resources Portfolio Holders Report. We will now move on to the report of the Streets, Parks and Open Spaces.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report's in front of you. I'd just like to give a quick update about Martindale Avenue Park. Very sadly, it was vandalised, very seriously vandalised, including the floor being dug up, goodness knows. And then, even more sadly, they went back and did some more damage. However, we've had a close look at it. We think we know what we can do with it. We've had prices, etc. We are going to spend £2,000 on getting it put as right as we can, so it's safe and so that the children of Fleetwood will have a nice park to play in. So I thought I'd give you an update on that. I said vandalism, I didn't say youths vandalised it. Somebody suggested it might have been marauding old age pensioners from out of town, but I daren't say youths vandalised it. It was vandalised, but I don't know by whom. Other than that, I'd just like to thank the officers for all the hard work they've done over the summer. I'm ready for your questions.
Are there any questions or comments for the portfolio holder? Councillor Shewan? Councillor Shewan, did you have a question? Did you have a... Terry Lee. Atkins.
And basically come across an inordinate amount of contaminated woolly bin. Now, some metal and the like work very hard challenge. But each time you go, there's some more. And we pick surely not working outside. We've been round the place to act. All contaminated in our area. I mean, very concerned. I mean, the lads are working very hard to sort it out. But because I don't know where they're coming from, but it appears to be moved into the area from somewhere else.
Talking about public bins or just bins that are appearing? It's like the wheelie bins for domestic.
To get a bin sack, the bin that each bin has attributed to it, the black bin,
Yeah.
the green bin,
Yeah.
and the blue, sort of rubbish.
Yeah.
And when you come across a bin where all the rubbish of all that is put into the one bin, it's contaminated. The bin will not, the contractor won't touch it. Quite understandably, he won't touch it. It needs sorting out, it's getting the contractor to do it. So it's down to our to sort it out. But we seem to have more and more of these bins between the first been round a couple of times and sort it out. Back again, and there's another load of bins.
So there's no ownership to them, they're just dumped in the back alleys?
Well, as far as it is, I mean, we've got a very high timber community,
Yeah.
you know, so you're bound to get an higher level of more. But this is extraordinary.
You can have a word with John Bettles or just
I understand the problem entirely. It could well be that these bins have been left out and other people have been dumping in them, which I know is a problem that we all have, don't we? That bins go out and other people stick in it. With regard to the system of taking them away and sorting them out, then there's not a lot we can do other than carry on with what we're doing, because like you say, the people that do the bins do a fantastic job, but they have to just face what our residents do, and it's our responsibility to try and recycle and everything else, and if we don't take up that responsibility, unfortunately it falls on the shoulders of our fantastic workforce, but it's very difficult to give you a solution. Absolutely. I would agree with you, but all I can say is that we do regularly send out, annually, about recycling, how to recycle, etc. We send out notices and things like that. We try and educate, but ultimately it's if people are lazy or if they are willing to put the correct things in the correct bins. Sorry, I don't have a solution for you, other than to say that if there's a problem we'll carry on working on it, but I'll have a second look at it with pleasure and I'll come back to you. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Bridge. Councillor Lady Atkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say a big thank you to the officers. I rang up when bin near me was absolutely overflowing and it was very quickly emptied. In fact, we got a new bin because the old one was in pretty bad state. So I'd just like you to pass on my grateful thanks for that.
Well, thank you. Obviously, we'll pass that on. I'm comparatively new to this, but I'm becoming more and more impressed about how proactive our people are and how professional they are and how they execute their duties.
Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I totally agree with your sentiments about the crews. However, I have to raise one point with you that people in my ward have been making complaints about how the attendants return their waste bins back to a safe point. Sometimes they're not accurate with placing the bins, they just seem to throw them. So I have to mention that because, like you, I do believe that the teams work really, really hard. However, it would be wrong of me not to mention this to you. Thank you.
Well, we have a system in place to address this, and if you email me the streets, and then we will pass it on, because our waste contractors are very good at reacting to what we ask them to do. So send it to me and I'll sort it out.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. That concludes the consideration of the report of the Street Scene, Parks and Open Spaces portfolio holder. We will now move on to the report of the Planning and Economic Development portfolio holder. Councillor Michael Vincent, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's one thing to add. Some of you may have seen that Fleetwood Market won the award for Best of Britain North West England Award for being essentially a traditional Victoria market that was sustained and grown throughout time, and credit for that goes to the people of Fleetwood and Wyre for continuing to visit the market, the stall holders, but also to the officers who keep it going. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments for Councillor Vincent? Councillor Emma Anderton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Vincent, planning permission was approved by committee to create 15 apartments on the former pier site in Fleetwood on the 5th of July 2017. Are you aware that the status of this application is still pending decision some 14 months later? Isn't it now time that this application was brought back before the planning committee with an officer's recommendation to refuse based on the inability of the developer to sign a Section 106 agreement with regards to provision of off-site affordable housing? Thank you.
Councillor Vincent, would you please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll discuss that with planning and come back to you on that, because I don't have an answer off the top of my head.
Councillor... sorry. Councillor Shewan.
Well, thank you, Councillor Vincent. Michael, it's... I realise it's not nothing to do with you really in fact that you're just supervising, but it's the people who make these people who are making up the national planning policy framework. They appear to have no basic understanding of the building trade or how buildings are built. They've now proposed that they have a permitted development of actually putting another storey on top of your own house. Now, you can imagine that. Well, he comes along a couple of years after he has to have another storey on. And then maybe if they, I'll have another storey on. And most of these houses, a lot of these houses built in the 1930s, and they're built on between 11-inch to 14-inch footings, concrete footings. And you start piling storey after storey onto that meagre footage, you're into trouble. But these people have just said putting another storey on your house is a permitted development. They're balmy, absolutely balmy. You know, it really needs something doing about it. They've also put down fracking as a possible permitted development. That's another balmy move.
Councillor Vincent, would you please respond?
The NPFF doesn't give planning permission. So while they may be your views, Councillor Shewan, it is not correct to say that the changes to the NPFF mean that you have permission to, just as a permitted development, to put a storey on your house. or to start fracking. So that isn't accurate, but I hear what you're saying.
Well, no, it is. They've actually put forward.
Sorry, Councillor Shewan, it's not an argument.
I'm not. I'm just coming back. Can I come back on that, please?
I'm sorry. No, you've asked your question, and I think Councillor Vincent's replied to it now. There's another question here. Sorry, Councillor Shewan. Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Under 3.2, is there any significance in the ground surveys that are being carried out at Ale House? Can you enlighten us on that necessity?
Believe, Councillor Lees, it's obviously just to help with the promotion of it. That's just an update as to the stage we're at. Obviously the signage is going to be on there to promote the site and try and advertise it, and we need permissions and work is needed before that takes place. So it's mainly just an update on what's happening with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just wondering, on the same topic, 3.1, is there any date yet for the master plan? Because it seems to have been postponed quite a few times now.
Not sure exactly when the consultation will start, but it then goes to this sort of 6-week consultation. So obviously, once councillors will be notified when the consultation does start. Right. We're hoping it will be reasonably soon, but we've got to get it fine-tuned and correct before it goes out to consultation.
All right, thank you.
Apologies, the microphones just seem to have on the top table.
Yeah.
No. Oh, thank you.
The system does work continuously, so maybe I shouldn't have told you that. But if you put the wire out, it stops the loop coming round. So thank you.
Okay. That concludes the consideration of the Planning and Economic Development Portfolio Holders Report. We will now move on to the report of the Neighbourhood Services and Community Safety Portfolio Holder. Councillor Berry, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to mention that the Flood Forum meeting is to be held this coming Thursday at the Civic, commencing at 1 p.m. If there are any members that can't attend but wish to raise issues appertaining to flooding, could they send an email to either myself or to Carl Green, and obviously we'll do our best to raise the issue with the various services. Other than that, Madam Mayor, my report is before members and I'll do my best to reply to any questions put to me.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Are there any questions? Councillor Emma Anderton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Berry, I'd like to raise the issue once again of speeding cyclists along the promenade in Fleetwood. Professional cyclists do seem to be using the prom as some sort of time trial track. This isn't so much of an issue at Rossall along the new seawall due to the much wider two-tiered walkways. However, the cyclists aren't slowing down when they progress to the older part of the lower prom, which is much narrower. Unfortunately, many of the modern cyclists don't seem to have bells to warn anyone of their presence, and to my mind this is an accident waiting to happen, with pedestrians and dog walkers all using the promenade. No one wants to see cyclists banned, but perhaps some signage could be erected or some comms could go out to local cycle clubs reminding them that the promenade is a shared space for everyone to use and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for that question. It was raised at the last council meeting, in fairness, by Councillor Lees, if I remember, and my response was that the officers were looking into it, and that is the situation due to the holiday period. They're still dealing with it. I did raise it today because I thought it might be mentioned. Obviously, we're thinking about media campaigns, we're looking at signage. It has been mentioned about rumble strips, but I don't know whether that will go down very well. But we are looking at it. I understand what you're saying. I've been on it's great on the new promenade. It's all right at Cleveland's new promenade, but there are these pinch points both at the Fleetwood end and at the Cleveland's end, which do present problems, which I'm fully aware of because of the fact that more cyclists are using it because of the new promenade. It's very popular with them. So it is a matter of urgency, and I will be dealing with this in the next coming weeks. But thank you for the question.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Councillor Fail.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At para 2.3, you report that Lancashire has seen an 18% increase in crime over the last 12 months. Please could you give your opinion as to whether you believe this is a result of the government funding cuts and the loss of around 800 police officers in Lancashire since 2010. More specifically, can I ask if there are any figures available with regard to the fairly recent spate of car break-ins in Thornton, Cleveland and Fleetwood, and in the absence of those 800 police officers, what is being done to tackle the car break-in issue?
I think on the car break-in issue, in Wyre in particular, we have had specific campaigns. We've realised when councillors and other people have raised the issue of incidents in the area, we've obviously got the local neighbourhood policing teams to deal with it, and I think they've dealt with it fairly successfully. Those figures, I am told, are going down, so that campaign locally has had some sort of an effect. As regards crime, well, it is a national issue and problem. I think one of the problems that Lancashire has faced is that we've had to increase the number of reporting issues that are taking place. If a crime is mentioned to the police, then it becomes a crime figure because of computer systems and people ringing in with phones. So I don't think that it's showing a major problem, certainly in this area, as to crime. I think that the figures I tried to indicate in my report is very low level where the increases have taken place, low-level crimes, and I've tried to put it down into non-injury assaults, less serious injury assaults, harassment and public order. So it might just be two people falling out and having a bit of barn, it becomes an offence. So there is that element of increased reporting of offences, but I can't honestly say that we're seeing an increase in serious offences, in fairness to what is going on with the local situation, certainly in Wyre.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Councillor Emma Anderton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Berry, I'd like to raise the issue of camper vans parking along the promenade in Fleetwood. The size of some of these vehicles means that they are taking up multiple parking bays or parking half their van on the pavement, and I wonder if the council can do anything to enlist some assistance from parking enforcement officers. There have also been complaints from residents that camper van owners are emptying the waste cassettes into the roadside grids, which, if true, is absolutely disgusting. And although there are no facilities available in the new pilot camper van park, can we please utilise some officer time to educate van owners who are parking on the roadsides and try and direct them to the new dedicated car park? Thank you.
I think one of the major problems that we've got, certainly in Fleetwood, is the fact that the roads are owned by Lancashire County Council, and they are not very forthcoming in doing enforcement up in this neck of the woods. That is the basic problem that we're facing, and we cannot get round that problem. All we can do is speak to Lancashire and see if they will do something about it. But I mean, I would like more parking limitations, to be quite honest, in the area. That's why we've tried to provide some sort of facilities at that lower car parking area. We'll have to see how successful that has been. We always have problems also with notices about travellers, which does cause us issues and problems as whether we can sort of open car parks and things like that. So We'll see how the survey has gone on with regard to travel to vans being parked in that lower car park. If it's seen to be successful, then we can put a few more facilities in, because I take the point what you mentioned about waste disposal. It's not on, is it? I'd like to think that it has been successful and that we can have something operating there. I think also we need to reiterate with Lancashire about the problem. We have county council officers. I think they should take it up, and it might be something that we could coordinate with Fleetwood Town Council, because people are down there who could possibly locally go round and speak to people who are using camper vans, that we could have sort of, do you know we have facilities in this car park opposite the Mount Hotel? So it's a joint venture, as far as I'm concerned, to try and sort this problem out.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Stevenson.
Obliged to you, Madam Mayor. Roger, to take up what Councillor Fales just said, he asked you quite clearly, did you or did you not agree with police cuts, and did you not consider, as he does, that this has contributed to a rise in crime? And I notice you very, well, you probably did it by accident, but you didn't answer the question, you evaded it. And I'd like to know what your personal opinion is. Do you or do you not feel that, agree with those cuts? Or are you for them, or are you against them? I'd like to know what your opinion is. Thank you.
Well, look, I'm not. The Commissioner gets a significant budget, both from the government and also from the residents of Lancashire. How he spends that budget is up to him. He is about to spend, let's say, 30 million on computer systems, on software and provision for police officers to have computers, for want of a better word, and handheld devices. Nice things, I agree, the way forward. But at the end of the day, you've got to make a decision what's appropriate for now, for the present situation. And I've got to mention that the Commissioner is not short of money. He has spent, I mentioned in my report, about his proposition to take on the fire service, and he's also where he spent in the region of, I can estimate, of about £30,000 to £40,000 in sort of pushing that agenda forward. He's now dropped it. He's also proposing to appoint a deputy at a salary of £25,000 a year. Now that's just the starting figure.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. I asked him a question. Are you or are you not in favour of cuts?
The answer is he has funds available. It's up to him to decide how he spends it.
Answer the question. Clear question put to you, not answered it.
We've got him on the ropes.
Can I just, for members' benefit, because sometimes we do have points of order, so I do have it written down here. A point of order may only relate to an alleged breach of council rules or procedures or law. If you do not receive an answer that you think you should get, that is not a breach of it doesn't matter. If you do not think an answer has been given to your question, it does not breach the rules or procedure or the law, I'm afraid. So it's not. It's not a point. It's not a point of order. I'm just giving you that advice.
Okay. Thank you. That concludes the consideration of the Neighbourhood Services and Community Safety Portfolio Holders Report. The next report is the Leisure, Health and Community Engagement Portfolio Holder. Councillor Bowen, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've only got one thing to add, and that's that I'd like to congratulate Anita Fish for the fine work what they do in the cemetery department, because they've been put forward for the small cemetery of the year, and it's for the cemetery in Poulton, and it's a nationwide competition, so they've done so well to get through to the finals. The only other thing I've got to say is I've been prompted by Councillor Vincent that would Emma Anderton like to present the prizes for the new cycle race that's going to take part on the promenade.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Are there any questions for Councillor Bowen? Sorry, Councillor Emma Anderton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Bowen, I know at paragraph 3.1 that you're working with Upbeats Academy in Poulton to produce a programme for young bands to perform in the marine gardens. Whilst it is good to see that plans to stage events on the outdoor performance area are finally underway, I am a little bit disappointed to learn that the only engagement seems to be with a private firm that charges for one-to-one music tuition. I would ask that wider engagement with local schools is also pursued. For example, Fleet Junior School in Fleetwood has a fantastic samba band, and both of the high schools have school bands that do work collaboratively together, and I'm sure that all would love the opportunity to showcase their musical abilities. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, we want to include all the local people if we can, all the schools and whatever. So I'll look into that and get back to you.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Stevenson.
I'm obliged to you again, Madam Mayor. What item shall we put this under? Well, a general item, Lynn. I want to tell you a story, and it's a true one. I was sat in the Gardener's Arms having a pint, and someone came up to me and said, "Are you a councillor?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And they asked me then, he said, "Well, why do we not make more use of the windmill for functions?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Have you tried asking anyone else?" And they said, "Well, we don't know who to ask." So I said, "Well, I'll certainly will ask the lead member. You know, have you ever thought of using it? It has facilities, and has there anything ever been put in the melting pot to get it to bring it to life? Do you think more use could be made?" Are you listening to me, Lynn? Yeah, good, thank you. Do you think more use could be made of the windmill if there was a need to do so? And these people who actually live very, very close to the windmill. So I'd just like your opinion. What do you think? Thank you.
We do actually have some events at the windmill. Anybody that's interested in putting an event on need to go through the volunteers that run it now for us. So if they get in contact with those through Alex Holt if they want to, then they'll be only too happy if things are okay to be running there.
Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I, like Councillor Anderton, was pleased to read the comment about the use of the bandstand at the Marine Hall and probably the internal stage and what have you. So I'm really pleased about that. However, I do feel, as Councillor Anderton pointed out, that it should be open to all the young people throughout Wyre to attend that venue if it's appropriate during the summer months. Like as I said at the last meeting, it's such a shame that with all the hot weather that we've had, we were not providing entertainment for the wider public. But I do hear what you say, portfolio holder, on this matter, and look forward to lots of other events that we can put on for young people. Thank you.
Councillor Walmsley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In relation to the question that's just been asked regarding the windmill is actually looking forward to a very exciting Heritage Weekend. They're also having 3 days of birthday celebrations. They had a Harry Potter children's event which accumulated about 50 children, and I think there are discussions going on well into and up to Christmas. So there is quite a lot of activities going on in the windmill, and I believe they've been very well received. Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. That concludes the consideration of the Leisure, Health and Community Engagement Portfolio Holders Report, which is the last of the executive reports this evening. Now is the opportunity for members of the Cabinet to make comment or ask questions on the reports of their colleagues. Do any Cabinet members wish to do so? Councillor Michael Vincent.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a question for Councillor Berry. Does Councillor Berry agree with me that it's a bit rich for the Labour group to be singing about cuts while seemingly supporting Police and Crime Commissioner Grunshaw in spending money that could be spent on frontline officers on a deputy PCC?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was trying to say this when I got the point of order that, you know, money is being spent by the Commissioner in spite of protestations from all sides, including from the Labour groups throughout Lancashire, that they did not want this to happen. He's still going ahead in appointing a deputy. So, you know, I'm sorry, it's just not on, is it?
Are there any more Cabinet members wishing to ask questions? That concludes the consideration of the executive reports. The next item is a periodic report from the Chairman of the Planning Committee, which is on page 31 of the agenda. Councillor Ballard, in the absence of Councillor Moon, would you please introduce the report in your capacity as Vice Chair of this committee?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to just put forward the report from Councillor Moon, and I'm quite happy if I can try and answer any of your questions.
Are there any comments or questions for Councillor Ballard? He will have a chance to respond when all the comments have been made and the questions have been asked. The report is noted. The next item is the periodic report from the Chairman of the Audit Committee. Councillor McKay, would you please introduce your report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to address a comment from Councillor Shewan made earlier, because his comment actually undermines my whole report. I'm astounded that Councillor Shewan thinks he has the knowledge to comment on one of the top 4 UK accounting and audit firms. BAE Systems don't seem to have a problem with KPMG and their work. As Councillor Vincent touched on, it's not even the same department. You're talking about a public sector. We're public sector, it'd be the private sector team that would have worked on Carillion. But what I find deeply offensive is the fact that by undermining KPMG, you're undermining our finance team and our audit team. We got a clean report from KPMG, and by you saying that KPMG aren't right to do the audit, you're criticising our department, and I will not have that. I've worked at both KPMG and PwC, and I have never worked with such a strong internal audit team as Wyre Council. So I think, Councillor Shewan, your comments were unnecessary and quite offensive. Moving on, I'll introduce the report before you. I'd like to say that... Sorry, I shouldn't interrupt. No, you shouldn't. Not a conflict of interest that you work for them. I've worked for KPMG before I became the chairman of the audit committee. I didn't take the role on until I had worked for them, until I'd left there. Pardon? I was actually offered the chair, and I brought that forward because I am quite an honest and decent person, unlike a lot of the people over there tonight. And the vile comments we've had about the former leader, I'm absolutely disgusted. I'd like to introduce my report now. We've had a really good year with the audit team and with the finance department. They've worked really hard to meet the first year where they've had to bring the deadline forward for the accounts. It was fantastic. There were no comments made on the audit report. It was a clean report. They've had to work with the changes in GDPR, and they've successfully implemented those. And it's the case we've got such a strong team here. That's why we're able to deliver the business plan. So I'll take any questions on the report.
Are there any comments or questions for Councillor McKay? She will have a chance to respond when all the when all the comments have been made and the questions have been asked. Councillor Shewan.
Thank you. Just a comment. The comment about KPMG. They actually audited Carillion's books.
I'm sorry, Councillor Shewan, the comment has to be about the audit report.
I was mentioned, Madam Mayor. I was mentioned, Madam Mayor, by the chair of the committee, named by her. So surely I've got the right to come back and justify my remarks that she so quickly criticised.
No, she didn't criticise.
Did she criticise those? I don't know where you come from,
Councillor
Gary.
Shewan. No, Councillor Shewan.
Yeah.
Councillor Shewan.
What's criticism?
What Councillor McKay did was to expand her introduction, because in her opinion she was clarifying to members that she felt the comments undermined her periodic report. So she made a clarification on that, because she clarified that KPMG, the team that work here, are public sector, not private sector. She was making it very clear that there is a distinct difference between teams at KPMG, and she felt that the comments undermined her periodic report, and she brought that as a clarification. So if you've got any comments, you can make. If you've got any comments,
KPMG then.
No, if you've got
they
any comments,
KPMG
you can.
Because that's who they are.
No, I'm afraid you're not.
You're trying to split the company into teams.
No, you're not. You're not listening to either Councillor McKay or myself. It's been very clearly explained. It's two separate departments at KPMG.
So?
It's public sector.
So it's the same company?
No.
And remarks was made about the remarks I made about the company.
As a point.
It's not your place, Mr. Bain, to defend KPMG.
I'm not.
It's my place to defend myself. All right. And
I'm sorry. I think when you listen back to the audio recording, you find I'm not defending KPMG. I'm bringing clarification to the meeting that reference was made, and a clarification that the team that inspect the accounts here at Wyre are the public sector team of KPMG. They are not the private sector team, and there is a clear difference between those two teams. They may be under the badge of KPMG, but the teams are separate, and that's what Councillor McKay was actually bringing to the attention of this meeting.
Mr. Payne.
Councillor Beavers.
May I come back, Mr. Mayor, on that? Because personally, I think that's total nonsense. I mean, the fact is, I made a remark about that, about KPMG, which is common knowledge. They went bust with $7 billion.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. There's no provision in the Constitution anywhere for Councillor Shewan to go off on a rant just because he wants to.
No, it's not. I quite agree with you. But
Thank you, Councillor Shewan. It's Councillor Beavers has something to say too. Thank you. Can you switch?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor McKay, I'd just like to, for clarification, explain my comment about the ex-leader of the council. You've been here relatively a short time, and I've been here a long time, and over the years, at one stage, the Police and Crime Commissioner used to be the leader of the Labour group. Councillor Gibson, when always, it was a week. Every full council had a go at the Police and Crime Commissioner. So it was an ongoing conversation within this council that I believed that Councillor Gibson had a problem with the Police and Crime Commissioner. This was an old joke. The majority of the Cabinet was here at that time. So when I implied that they had the same problem, I was inferring to the problem that I used to explain then between the Police and Crime Commissioner and the previous leader of this council. It was no way derogatory. or meant in any other way to slant the Cabinet, but it was meant purely as a joke. So I do apologise, but I do find it very offensive that you would describe the rest of the Labour group in the terms that you did, to say that we were not nice people over this side of the room, and I find that terrible, and I expect you to apologise to the Labour group. We are all here as councillors for the benefit of the people that we represent, and we don't come in this council chamber to be attacked by you or Councillor Bridge. So I apologise for what I said about Peter Gibson, but it was in jest. Thank you.
Can we all just calm down a little bit, please, and get back to the report? Okay. Thank you for your comments, everyone. Are there any comments on the periodic report? Councillor Anton.
I'd just like to make two very brief points. Councillor McKay has a very in-depth knowledge about this area, and presumably that's why she's the chair. She's a very good grasp of what goes on. For the rest of us, I would like my thanks to go to the officers, because they do everything to make it a very difficult subject sort of palatable to the rest of us and give us a chance to really try and understand it. And I would also like to say that if anybody is not happy with any of the auditors, there is an opportunity to speak to them in the audit meeting. We don't have to complain here. It should have gone first of all during the committee meeting, and then if there's no satisfaction, it comes up the ladder. But it shouldn't escalate like this when it's a committee issue.
Any other questions or comments?
No comments. I'm sorry to have offended you, but any comments about Councillor Gibson I think should be kept out of the council chamber. I find it really offensive at the moment.
Thank you. The report is noted. The next item is a report on modifications to the local plan. Councillor Michael Vincent, would you please introduce the report and propose the recommendations?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to propose the recommendation. Don't forget chips, not mash, Alice. Firstly, members should have received a council supplement. Today, you should have had a printed copy. I have spares if anybody doesn't have one. Obviously, the proposal is subject to these modifications, dated published on the 5th of September for the council meeting of today. Members will be aware of the amount of work that went into the local plan. The officers, teams of officers, spent literally years doing research of various different types, obtaining reports, banging their head against Lancashire County Council shaped brick walls, etc. They got there in the end, and what they produced, after the amount of work that was involved, while there are minor amendments proposed, it is a very solid, robust local plan, and if it wasn't, it would have just been kicked straight back to us. The response we got back was the inspector viewed things slightly differently to we did and followed the evidence in a slightly different way to us. My understanding is that is always the case. You either get suggested changes or it comes back to you. It's very, very rare for it just to be accepted in its normal terms. Inspectors, I would think, would want to add some value themselves. So, given the proposals, given the suggested amendments, I would ask that the report be approved by council. And bear in mind one thing, there are not three options here. There is not an option to accept the recommendations, or option two, not to accept the recommendations and go back to the inspector with our views and our counter argument, or just not to accept them. If we don't accept them, option three, we don't have a local plan. End of story, and it's back to the Wild West in terms of developments and developers applying for sites and getting them anywhere and anywhere. Option two doesn't exist. If we go back to them and don't accept these options, then we go to option three, so we don't have a local plan. So essentially the options are we accept this and we have a local plan and we immediately start the review, or we don't and we don't have a local plan. Happy to take any questions.
It's not questions, is it? Is there a seconder for the proposal?
I'm happy to second that, Madam Mayor, and to reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Are there any comments, questions or amendments? Councillor Fail.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On one hand, it's clear that this council needs a local plan in place, but on the other hand, it's also important that that plan works effectively for the residents of Wyre. Doubts over its effectiveness should really have stopped the publication of the draft local plan in September 2017. Whilst Labour councillors voted against the draft plan as it was going to the inspector, Conservative councillors enthusiastically waved it through. It was always unlikely that the hearing would resolve the plan's deficiencies, and that has proven to be the case. The deficiencies in the transport network have been recognised for a long time, so it's really disappointing that the outcome of the hearings has resulted in yet more houses being planned without an infrastructure to support the level of housing proposed. This is in spite of the evidence presented actually warranting fundamental changes to the location and the volume of individual allocations. With regard to the A585, a 2005 report to Wyre's Cabinet on the North West Regional Spatial Strategy Options Paper recognised congestion on the route is a major barrier to growth at Fleetwood Port and to the economic investment in the Fleetwood-Thornton area. The report went on to say that construction of a new link road between Junction 3 of the M55 and Fleetwood Port should be actively promoted in the regional spatial strategy as a priority highway proposal. Tellingly, the report says housing provision should be a response to economic growth and not a prelude to it. That was 13 years ago, and the employment position has become much worse since then, yet here we are with the council seemingly now supporting a sticking plaster Mains Lane bypass rather than for a strategic answer. The road to nowhere, as many are calling it, will not promote the economic growth that the council talked about the need for in 2005. Despite the council's 2005 stance on housing not being a prelude to economic growth, since 2011 we've seen over 500 new houses built in Thornton Cleveland, over 450 new houses built in Fleetwood and nearly 300 in Poulton, all without the economic growth and accompanying transport infrastructure to support it. And it's going to get worse with over 1,400 new houses planned for Thornton Cleveland, over 300 in Fleetwood and nearly 1,300 houses in Poulton and Carlton. So around 3,000 new houses planned for the west of the borough to add to the 1,200 or so already built since 2011. And when you consider the plan is a plan for increased commuting, the road to nowhere will not support this level of house building. The plan does not deliver on transport or employment. The council is doing exactly the opposite of what it said it should do in 2005, i.e. that housing provision should be a response to economic growth and not a prelude to it. With regard to public open space, the council is not even attempting to meet national targets. It has the ability to rectify the public open space shortfalls, yet it chooses to ignore the problem. The current plan is in need of major modification to make it sound. Sadly, the modifications the plan does need are not the ones the hearing has resulted in. It seems the build the houses and see what happens approach prevails. One positive is that a partial review is expected within 3 years, and it is hoped that key indicator measures for public open space, employment, commute and congestion will be in place to inform decision making at that time. To be given the choice to approve these main modifications is not a great one, as the plan was flawed before it was even reached the inspector. There is nothing to be lost by this going out to consultation, but it seems that in the short term the fundamental changes the plan requires won't be achieved. Voting against would be futile. The damage was done when the Conservative councillors allowed the draft plan to go to the inspector without the fundamental changes it needed. On the other hand, voting for this would be tantamount to backing an ineffective plan that is not sustainable. It's not sustainable without tackling the transport deficit. It's not sustainable without improving employment prospects and reversing the increasing commute trend. And it's not sustainable if Wyre cannot meet public open space targets. As such, the Labour group will be abstaining.
Are there any other comments or questions? Councillor
reserve the right to speak. Well, Councillor Henderson reserved the right to speak, does it? No, because you reserve the right to speak.
Okay, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In 2012, and I keep reminding him about this, Mr. Payne said that there would be, this local plan would take about 18 months to do. I usually say that to bring a grin to his face, but after what I've just listened to, I just find it quite amazing that here we are now, 6 years later, and it's been hard work. I was one of the very first ones, Madam Mayor, on the group, as were some of the other members sitting here. And at any time, because of the way that the group was fashioned, at any time could any member, Labour members and Conservative members, fashion the way that the plan was going. That's why we had the intensity of meetings that we had. By the end of the meeting, everybody had to be in agreement about what that meeting was before we moved on. And so we are here now where we are, 6 years of hard work later. As for having a go about the mains lane, it's a mains lane improvement. It's not just that mains lane, that's it. The mains lane improvement is one part of a very larger plan. Off the top of my head, I think the mains lane improvement's costing about something in the region of 50 million. 50 million doesn't come along every single day. If somebody comes along from the Highways Agency and offers you a chance to relieve some of the pressure on your roads, you take it. You don't say go away and come back with a full one, because they will go away and they'll give the money to somebody else. And I'm even going to take you even further back. The homes were mentioned, the amount of homes. Well, when John Prescott was the deputy leader of the Labour Party, he demanded that 2,000 houses per year from every authority be built immediately. 2,000 houses. I'm not going to say that we don't need the houses, we do, but Prescott's plan was brilliant. On a Friday he said go and build 2,000 houses a year, and on Monday he wanted it doing. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Michael Vincent.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I find it would be amusing if it weren't so ridiculous. Councillor Fales clearly read this last night because he was very quiet at Cabinet. He states that he accepts, and the Labour accept, that there is a need for a local plan, yet he then goes on what is essentially just a lot of nonsense, which can be summarised as, we shouldn't agree the local plan till it's exactly as Rob Fales says it should be. He says it's flawed. The inspector disagrees. The inspector's given it a few tweaks. Pretty sure that a national planning inspector who reviews local plans as a job knows more about it than Councillor Fale. The fact is, we are set a minimum number of housing developments by central government. We either engage with that figure, put it in the places we think it can go, or we just allow a free-for-all. If we put this out to consultation after consultation after consultation, we'd have planning applications on every site in the local plan and every site not in the local plan already. We cannot allow that to go on indefinitely. The plan is not flawed. Members should vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent. That concludes the debate. Would members please vote now on the recommendations? Those in favour, please show. Thank you. Those against? Any abstention? The policy is approved. The next item is a notice of motion. Oh, sorry. However, there are none. So that concludes the business for the evening, and the meeting is closed. Thank you for attending.